While many dentists get out of dental school and jump right into work, others end up years into a practice and feel like they're chained to their chair or spinning their wheels. At Duckett Lad, we've discovered that there are 6 phases of long-term practice success. On this podcast, we'll explore each phase of success and help you on your growth journey.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dental Momentum Podcast powered by Duckett Ladd Dental CPAs and Advisors. Jared Duckett back at you with my business partner, Bill Ladd. And Bill, I know you're getting ready to go on a trip, man. These in-person events are back. I'm happy. How about yourself?
You know, it's weird. You go through 18 months of never traveling at all, and then it's like all of them get compressed into a short time period. So it takes a while, at least it did for me, to kind of get back in the swing of things. But you're right. I mean, it's so cool that we could have a conversation like our guest today over a virtual meeting, but I know you met him in person and it's just different, you know, to be able to sit down and talk to somebody in the same room. It's special. So I'm excited, ready to go.
Yeah. So, you know, what we've got today, so we've got a great guest, but yeah, I was able to meet this gentleman at an in-person conference, just an awesome weekend we had in Philadelphia, and just kind of bring you on. So Dr. Lewis Chen, entrepreneurial dentist, multi-practice owner up in the New York, New Jersey area. So Lewis, appreciate you joining us, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you for introducing me, and good to see you guys. Good to meet you, Jared, at the event. And you know, it's weird to be in person, and for sure, absolutely. It's I forgot what it means, and forgot what it means to travel for conferences these days, and it's never the same. You know, the human touch is always persistent, and I think it will continue to persist. I think as the more virtual we get, I think the more, I guess, isolated we become. So yeah. Happy to be here. Happy to be here. Thank you.
I agree. The in-person events kind of feels a little weird at first again, doesn't it? It's kind of like you've never done it before. It's just, but once you get in the groove, it's awesome. So
I always have to make sure it says virtual versus in person, just in case I show up to the wrong place.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, what I want to do, let's just dive in, Lewis. And what I want to do is kind of just, if you could just kind of unpack, you know, where you're at now, you know, we talk about the dental momentum journey all the time. Where are you at in your journey? What does your business aspect look like today? And then what we can do is, once you unpack it, kind of back up, kind of start from the beginning, walk through the journey, you know, from where you started to where you are.
Yeah. So currently, you know, as of today, in this day and age, 2021, we are at 8 practices. We started this journey in 2019, and since then we've been slowly but surely growing. And sometimes we take big leaps of faith, and inevitably you just have to, you know, take a couple steps back and reverse engineer. So I'm a huge believer of reverse engineering.
Yeah. So 8 practices started, did you say 2019, 2018?
2018 was when we first initially started a conversation with a build out and our acquisition. And then officially doors open 2019, February and March at the same time. And that was a weird time because I didn't know how to open a practice. So opening one and buying one at the same time was a wild ride.
Yeah.
And so you built these practices out, and within a year, and again, I don't want to completely timestamp this episode, but I think it's still important to kind of talk about the fact that the world turned upside down, especially for dentists. You know, so real quickly, tell us what was that like as you were just getting into this enterprise? You were growing rapidly, and then all of a sudden, boom, March of last year hits. What was that like for you?
It's I think it's all about self-reflection at the end of the day. You know, when we first started in February 2019 and March 2019, it was you know, we thought we were kings of the world. You know, like, oh, we got 2 practices. We now, one practice worked. Let's try it for the 2 other practices. You know, it's not a one size fit all solution, right? So one's an orthodontic practice, the other one is a GP practice. Totally different workflows, totally different hiring processes. What you're looking for, what you get, completely different. And you know, me, as when I walked in, I had no idea how to manage either, right? So I was hoping that over the year, okay, maybe we saw some change, some things we can improve on, some workflows that we can introduce, and it gets a little tricky, right? So when the pandemic hit, I thought that actually it was probably the best time of my life. I always call it an evolution, right? So I found out, you know, if I'm going to sit at home, I was listening to all the webinars about, you know, the loans and everything like that. And my partner kind of spearheaded that. So I focus a lot on re-engineering the things that I thought was a struggle for me, at least. So whether it's check-in process, whether it's workflows, training manuals, all the above, everything that I had initially written, I had to scrap the whole entire process and redo it again. And I thought, I had a business coach too at the time, and I, was a coach, getting coached, and what am I not seeing? Reading more books, more self-isolation because you just had to. I was able to engineer a new workflow, engineer new systems, engineer my mindset and my mentality for how I approach practices, and and really start becoming a better leader. Especially during this time, like you have to lead with better purpose, bigger purpose. To this day, I'm still constantly finding ways to do that. So I think that when the pandemic hit, it was a good time for me to kind of step away for a couple months of dentistry, and just reevaluate the things that weren't working, think about the things that were working, and then have a true strategy for implementation. As soon as doors opened, I think in May, end of May in Jersey at least, we bought a practice and we had to see patients, and that was a weird time too because we bought a. This is our first time taking a huge risk because we bought a practice. I'm in it now during the pandemic, and since then we've been growing, and unintentionally, it just so happened we saw the growth in other offices because of pent up demand. That we had to keep our doors open, so we didn't close during the pandemic at all.
So Lewis, heading into the pandemic, did you have the 2 practices or did you have more at that point?
2 practices, yeah.
And then one under contract perhaps, or one that was in the works, it sounds like.
One was in the works. Yeah, so one was in the works, and then we created a satellite office within the practice too. So this way we were able to service patients for other needs as well.
So it almost feels like the timing for you to have that inner reflection and to really focus on the business could not have hit a better time, because since then you've gone from 2 to 3 to 4, all the way up to 8 to soon to be 10. It feels like that's not a coincidence that what you were able to do during that time period set you up for that.
Yeah, and I think that comes a lot with again, like just kind of stepping back more. And I think that as doctors, we are so in a lot of the times that we realize that being in the practice is a self-limiting step, right? And as long as you step back, you start seeing the bigger picture from the eagle's eyes view. That what are the things that are actually working? Who are the chess players right now on the board right now? Who do we have out there? And what's the next step? And who do we bring on forth to our team to delegate work to more and more? And I realized that the more you learn to delegate, the more work needs to be done. Because you realize that you cannot just say, hey, you're doing this for some period of time. All right, take it over because I don't want to take care of it anymore, right? Versus, before I let go of this control of work, let me see if I can provide you those resources for you to be successful at it. So this way you don't have to call me all the time, right? So a lot of the development came from like learning about the things I had to let go, right?
Yeah, that's good. Let's do this. So, I mean, it's crazy impressive going from 2 to 8 we're talking 18 months, give or take. Is that right?
Yeah.
So let's bookmark this just real quick. Let's go back from dental school to 2 practices. Walk us through that a little bit. And then I want to really unpack this 2 to 8 because there's a lot here, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I graduated dental school in 2016 from Columbia. And top of the class, and really loved dentistry. Just really loved helping people. Was the guy who stayed, who didn't take vacation, who worked through spring break, worked through summer vacations. Why? Just wanted to get as much exposure as possible, right? So I was very eager, just generally speaking. You put me in a place, I'll go in and get it done. Not a problem. I was always that guy. And that's where I met my professor, who was my mentor and still is my mentor, and now also my business partner. So it was an interesting time, right? I could not have found a better time to have been in dental school at that particular school, that particular date, that particular year. Is it a coincidence? I think it's luck. And I think timing is so important, right? Just like the pandemic, it's all about timing. And after that, I went to a 2-year residency at the Bronx VA, and I was moonlighting, working for my partner, my mentor at the time. So I was kind of doing my own thing, just working hard, going to residency full time. Did a startup company back then, and I left it during the residency because it's too much work. And they raised a lot of money for theses, so it was an interesting time to develop concepts and ideas. And I guess I got the thrill of pitching to VCs in an incubator almost. I was like, this is cool. Never done it before. And I just love the hunger there.
So real quick, that startup company, non-dental related, or
it is dental related, but
okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it's evolved. I was there during the startup phase for a couple months, and then being in residency full time, doing startup, and then working was just a lot of work. In the meantime, I also rented out a chair after my first year residency and started my own quote unquote pseudo practice. So I was seeing patients after work, after residency. I was also teaching at Columbia as a professor at the time. I was working as an associate, and yeah, so I had like 4 or 5 jobs at the time. And
you were not sleeping.
It was hard. It was hard. And I realized, but the thing is I think this comes from when I was at college, where I had to just manage my time a lot better. I commuted to school. I went to NYU for economics, and doing like science courses and economics courses, and just commuting, working part-time. Like I had to manage my time. Work, like time was like every second, every minute mattered. Like it got to the point where if I was pacing too slow, I might miss the next train. If I was running, I might get it, right? It's like one of those things that I realized that every single minute of your life actually does matter. So when it came to managing this, it's like, okay, it's not a big deal. Hard work wasn't a big deal for me. It's always what I put in, right? So during that time, and I left residency in 2018. As soon as I left residency, we were already scouting for spaces. So I went, my trajectory was straight into ownership from the get-go. I wasn't going to the existing practice I was working at because I would rather start something new. But yeah, kind of got thrown into the fire and just figured it out. Do I have everything figured out? Probably not. But finished residency in June 2018, started the conversation for looking for spaces, looking for offices, scouting a lot, and then found a retail space in New York City, built that, and acquired a practice at the same time.
You said something I don't want to brush over this, because I think it's important. Is you mentioned that you had a professor who became your ultimate, or your mentor, but then your business partner, which is such a cool trajectory. But I have a question on that, which is, how did that evolve? Is that something that you sought out? Did he see something in you and it just kind of organically evolved? Because I don't think people think that way. And I think that's such a huge advantage if you can find that mentor relationship. So just curious, how did that happen?
Yeah, so he's a prosthodontist, Dr. Francis O. He's my partner, and my other partner is Dr. Jason Lin, orthodontist. Both we're all from Columbia, so it's just a nice, mentality there. Yeah, I was there, and he was a prosthodontist, Francis O. And he was just really good at his dentistry, because if you're a prosthodontist, you're super specialized, right?
Yeah.
So I only wanted to work with him. I realized that I didn't know enough, so I waited for him. Even when he was late, I waited for him to get answers a question. I asked questions because I realized I didn't know much answers, right? But I was good with people. I was good with taking care of patients. I love patient care, and he was a entrepreneurial guy. I knew much later on. Initially, I was like, "You're a great prosthodontist. You're a great professor. You really pushed me to the max and maximize my potential." And it was only until I left residency that he's like, "Hey, why don't you just come on, moonlight and work and learn, get a little bit of experience." So I think it was December 2016. Actually, I have a picture on Facebook and whatnot of him, and we were eating steak at a steakhouse, and then at that time he asked me, like, "What do you want to do with your life? Like, are you going to practice dentistry? Like, what are you here for?" Because I was like, we should catch up. I haven't talked to you in a while. So when I shared with him my vision as to what I wanted to do, and I had this vision when I was 19 years old, and I said, I wanted to be able to provide affordable care, transparent care, honest care, and really good care. In New York City, this urban environment, it's just a tough market because it's so saturated and it's so expensive. But why would I provide dental treatment that's so expensive and minimize or create a barrier to entry for patients to get good dental care and be healthier, right? And I said, I wanted to do this. I wanted to get another practice, go have 5-6 practices and just oversee that and deliver that vision, right? thinking, okay, wait, dinner kind of transpired, and we were working, and he was through the process. He was kind of mentoring me, and I was like, I'm starting to see a lot of like stuff that we can improve on. So making suggestions like, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? It's not efficient, streamlined, whatever. And then he was like, okay, I got to know who you are now. So we got another dinner another day. He's like, why don't we sit down and what's your financial goals? What are you trying to do? And I think it's important in terms of alignment is where your financial goals are with partners.
And what year in dental school are you here?
I graduated at the time.
Okay, so you graduated.
I had just graduated and had that conversation in December 2016. And then I've been working with him since, and then just kind of learning and providing suggestions and, just spearheaded my own things.
So when you look back on that relationship, I'm sorry, Jared, and you think where you are now, do you think you would be where you are now, or do you think you would be close to where you are? I'm just curious, like if you could quantify the effect of having that relationship, how important was it in your journey and to get you where you are right now?
I think it's everything. I would not be where I am if I had not known him at the right time. And I did not want to lose an opportunity to not grow or take a chance, because it's a lot of headache to grow from 2 to 8, and let alone the operational stuff, right? And then you have to think about the financial aspect, in terms of taxes, in terms of whether or not you want to grow, can you grow? You just need the bigger team that I haven't had experience managing, which he is more interested in. He's interested in the financial aspect. He's interested in the development aspect, but he's not interested in the operational aspect, which is my thing. So we kind of work together there. But it was great because that's not my forte, and I didn't get a background on it. I just went straight into it, not knowing any of that. And so we were kind of holding each other's hand at that time, right? He hasn't really gone to the practices. I've been kind of growing it, seeing what works, what doesn't work. And to that point, to answer your question, there's no doubt that I would not be where I am if it weren't for him and the people that I know.
So June 2018, you jumped out of residency and you immediately purchased a practice. Is that what you said?
Yeah, was already in the process of searching for practices. Yeah. So
you purchased a practice and then did a scratch start in New York. Did I hear that right?
Same time. Yeah.
Same time.
Yeah. So when we were already devising the whole layout for our retail space, but we were also negotiating the other location, the GP practice that we acquired. So at the same time, so one opened a month earlier than the other, but they were both happening at the same time.
It was the scratch start in New York an ortho, or was it a GP as well?
Ortho in the New York City office. In New Jersey was an acquisition.
Perfect.
So let me jump in real quick, Jared. So I always pick out little pieces because I think it's brilliant. Like one thing, every single minute of your life matters. That we need to show note that one. That's awesome. That needs to become a quote. But you mentioned really what we would consider your purpose or your why, why you wanted to be an owner of a dentist and not just employee, because you could have control over lowering that barrier of entry. So, people can get the confidence that comes with a great smile or whatever your intrinsic motivation is. How did your partner internalize that? He's a numbers guy, so there's always could potentially be trade-offs and things. I mean, how did you guys align on that when you brought that up to him?
Interestingly enough, his practice is also already like that, which I liked. So, because when I first got in, it was a practice that, beautiful practice. It was like nice and white. Everything was like, you went in there, you knew you were getting top service. Yeah. And I already saw his fees, which is lower than the local average zip code fees. And I was like, what's the purpose? Like, why don't you charge more for what you do? Because it's like boutique service you're providing. He's like, well, same thing. Like, why would I have people turn around and go find someone else when I know I could do it better? Right. And I was like, that was what I wanted to do when I was like younger. Right. So this is what, and we were aligned in that vision already from the get-go. So it was very easy to kind of merge with him.
Love that.
Yeah.
So 2 practices, you got a GP, you got an ortho. We're in February 2019. Yeah.
Yeah. Or 1 year later.
1 year later. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's walk through. So how did you go from 2 to 8? I mean, let's walk through, let's detail this out a little bit, because it sounds like that, like Bill, you hit on this, is that you use COVID to recharge your battery just a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of stuck supercharged it. You
Yeah.
supercharged it while you were, I'm gonna say, down for COVID, and then it's like, boom, he's charged. It's go again.
Yeah.
So walk through that.
Yeah, it was weird. You know, I was just, listening to a lot of, podcasts. I was just kind of reading more leadership books, management books, trying to understand what what these were, like, roadblocks were, right? And I'm like, sometimes I feel like I wasn't getting it. I would spend hours just focusing on one document, writing things out, say, it's not gonna work, gotta try it again. So, and I spent a lot of time just doing that. And that allowed me to start utilizing it. I didn't focus on writing things for one practice. That's why it took a long time. I said, well, can this work in another practice? Can it work in that other practice? Can it work in this practice, right? So I had to spend a lot of time recharging and realizing that in order to also recharge, you have to learn more about yourself, right? And that learning about yourself is a form of recharge for me, because there's you sit down, you have a cup of coffee or tea, whatnot, and you realize that wasn't my best performance. And back then it was like go, 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 go. You never got the chance to sit down to recharge, right? So from that time, a period of a few months of just writing things and just doing things, it allowed me to see a lot more. And that was the biggest revelation, was for me to have my eyes open even further and wider, and figure out what didn't work, what currently was working there, like who do I need on my team. Like, I understood team members a lot more. I understand culture a lot more, because everyone talks about culture being the most important part in a practice, and it is because without a strong team that helps one another, you're not going to get a strong practice, right? And numbers will show for itself later. But in maintaining that was really important to me, which I didn't fully understand earlier until I took a step back and realized I cannot continue to work like this if I don't have a strong team. So that's what that allowed me to kind of step back more and more, to work more and more on the back end stuff to grow.
Yeah. So during COVID, during the shutdown, I mean, you're recharging, learning more about yourself, books, etc. Were you kind of creating a plan to go start acquisition mode?
Not necessarily, right? That's why it's a timing, right? Because who would have thought that the pandemic would have been an opportunity for us to grow when everyone else was closed, right? And I was hesitant to purchase a practice with my partner. I was like, listen, we don't know how long this is going to be around for. Yeah. We don't have the ball to kind of know whether or not this is going to be a right purchase. And he was like, well, I think it's going to feel good, I feel good about this. I feel, and I was like, okay, fine. Only if you, offer at this number, right? And I'm like, okay, let's try it. What's the worst thing that can happen is it goes south and we find another way to exit, something like that, right? And we did. And then it was panning out. It was going through, and eventually, before you know it, it was like, all right, we got to open the doors. We got to run. And for me, I was like, okay, I wanted to use this time to redesign my workflows, my SOPs and everything. And I had to do it. I had to sprint, because before the doors were open, I want to make sure it was good from the get-go, right? Because I think that change later is much harder than setting clear expectations earlier. So I spent a lot of time learning how to do that. So yeah, we were not truly planning for it. We just so ended up happening to do that. And as a result, we said, okay, let's try this another concept. So we started that concept where we kind of created a satellite office for the ortho in our GP practice. So now we have a GP ortho in one practice. And then from there, we're like, okay, this is working. Like it's like people are saying yes. Maybe it's pent up demand. Just like the previous financial crisis, is that ortho was booming after that, right? And it boomed here too. So we said, okay, let's try another one. So we just ventured off and did our own thing there.
So Lewis, let me jump in real quick, because Jared and I we're really huge on partnerships, and in particular, well done partnerships, and we've seen good and bad, but it feels to me like you guys have a special partnership. So as you're going through COVID, and then also the expansion plans, the rapid expansion plans, tell me, what was it like having a partner alongside you to kind of bounce those ideas off of, to think through critically your decisions? I mean, how important was that to have that partner to lean on? during those situations?
I guess to backtrack a little bit, I think it's important to understand the values of your partners, right? Their goals in life, what they're doing it for, because that's really important, because some decisions are made by their core values, right? And then if we're not so aligned in what we're trying to achieve together, then I think it's a partnership that's rocky. We are lucky because, you know, he wants to grow, I want to grow. Here's how, you know, and our visions were aligned, our financial goals were aligned. We were never profit driven in that sense. We were not huge splurgers. We don't splurge on like buying a nice car, you know, they're doing this or doing that. And it's a reflection of how the business should function, right? So we don't splurge on buying, you know, scanners for the sake of buying a scanner, right? So we make smart strategic financial decisions. It was good to have a partner to kind of piggyback these ideas from, because, you know, we see things at two different lenses, you know, one of which is, hey, I'm on site demographically, not looking, not feeling it, giving my 2 cents. He has his own set of views, whether financially it would make sense. And then we just kind of piece the puzzles together, and it worked. We're hoping that it continues to work.
I think what's interesting there is, and you said it perfectly, and I don't know if I've ever stopped to think about it this way, but when you and your partner are completely aligned in values, but also in vision, those conversations are very different. It's not left field conversations that creates a massive amount of tensions. It's more objective conversations of, we know we want to grow. Is this the right way to grow? Or is this the right practice to bring in? That feels like a very different conversation than if you were wanting to kind of pull back and he was wanting to go guns a-blazing. That's interesting to me, that alignment there made those conversations, I would think, easier.
A lot easier, because we were talking about, you know, different things based off our values. So we just had to kind of weigh what mattered more at the time. And a lot of the decisions that we're making are, I guess, in our eyes, more strategic at that sense. You know, taking a risk. You know, I realize I take risks, but I'm not huge on risk taking, because I think that it's a lot on that's on the line. But he kind of helps leverage that as well. So having a partner to kind of lay on and just kind of rely on too is important, because if the sink ships, we all sink together.
So talk about that a little more.
Not to.
I mean, talk about that a little more, because you're right. I mean, you said your core values align. I'll use Bill and myself as partners. Our core values align, but our personality types are completely different. Mm-hmm. You know, is that what you see too? Are you partners completely different?
Completely different. Yeah. We're focused for different things, different interests in certain things. But at least from the business side, financial side, it is aligned. And you know, we don't have to be like brothers at that sense, you know, like we don't have to be twins. But at the minimum, we should be aligned with what's most important in our career.
So let me ask you this. You said something, you know, you touched on something I'd like you to unpack a little bit more, which is your team. And again, kind of time stamping this in the fall of 2021, you know, there are issues with people finding great team members. You know, the whole industry is in flux. Tell us, how do you view your team members? Kind of put us in how, as a business owner and you and your partner, how do you look at your team members? How's that feel to them?
Yeah, you know, interestingly enough, hiring has been my thing now. I kind of take over that. For me, I've always believed in team culture. I've always believed that if you're going to be excelling in the practice and want to be there, have an environment that's conducive to success and that's everyone else's happiness, right? Yeah. And initially, same thing. Just we hire for talents, we hire for skill set, we hire for people who have done great things, who have had experience in dental, and we realize that it's much harder to mold. So I've actually spent a little bit of time redesigning the core values in our company culture, in actually, you know, tangible form, so that at the minimum, all the people that we're going forth, we share these core values with from the get-go in the interview process. So this way we know from the get-go, our expectations are as such. And one of the biggest core values that we have, that at least personally for me, that I share with my my future team members, is be good and do good. Very simple thing in life. Be a good person. If you're not going to hold the door for someone walking through, and you're going to just let it go, if it's an older elderly person, like, come on, dude, just hold it for 6 seconds more, right? it's like stuff like that. Like you can't teach that. It's either in you or it's not in you, right?
Right.
So, and naturally, if you're being a good person, you end up doing good things for people. In our case, patients and our team. The team comes first before the patients in my eyes, because if we can focus on developing that, being good to one another, the team will eventually be good to the patients, right? Inevitably so. But it's hard to kind of do it the other way around, where you're super great with patients and you all hate each other, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
and that's where I kind of spearheaded that, and where I said, you know what, let me take care of that. Let me build a team. Let me get the people who I think will mesh well based off my conversations with them. And at the minimum, the core values set, I set all of them, and making sure they're aligned before we hire them. And when we do, we kind of reevaluate to see if they're following up with that. And then the rest is history. It's hard. It's definitely hard now because people are looking for skill set, and I actually don't hire for skills in terms of experience, because a lot of my team members in the offices are actually all from sales. Rarely ever in dental unless they're like clinically involved, but rarely ever from dental.
And you're speaking our language. Team first, just do the right thing. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But you're right.
Simple,
I don't
but
think
hard.
you can teach
Simple and
it.
hard.
Yeah. I mean, it's just you have it within already.
Yep.
So 2 practices, COVID hits, you go to 8. Lewis, I'm a firm believer. If you get 10 hours of sleep tonight, you might get 20 practices by the end of the year. Where are you going with this thing? What are you doing? What are your goals?
The goal is same thing. My primary focus and my personal purpose and vision. So my purpose in life is to inspire others, so that, to gather inspiration from people, so that I can inspire others to do more, so that they can inspire others as well. So I like to create this sort of domino effect of inspiration, because I realized that I didn't have that earlier in myself. I had to draw inspiration from myself. I had to draw inspiration from watching YouTube videos. I had to draw inspiration from meeting new people and just asking questions and learning what that truly meant, right? And my vision for what I'm trying to do is to help as many lives as possible, because I want to be able to sit down and comfortably sleep and know that all of the practices, they're affordable, they're providing high quality, because our standards are high. Of course, I have a prosthodontist, and I was trained at the VA program. It's like quality is everything, and my orthodontist is like super good. So I just know from the get-go the fundamental treatments we're providing is, I know, of high quality, and the team is of high quality. I know that's going home that all the team members have been helping others for the right reasons, not to see a cavity and prep it and then fill it and do it for, I don't want to be the practice that people go to and say, hey, now I have 7 cavities after this exam. Before I had none last year, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to be the practice that says, you have near nothing. Let's put a watch on it. We'll take care of it as we need to go. Because if it were my tooth, so I wouldn't want it done. So it's the empathetic, like, platinum rule, which is the modified version of the golden rule, which is do unto others as if they would want to be done unto them. So that there's an empathetic part of that. And I think who said it best was Danny Myers. So I had a list of podcasts about him, and that's what he said, is that, in the Shake Shack world, he talked about like empathetic rule being the primary rule.
I love that. So you didn't say it, but my gut tells me that there's probably a number there, and we're not going to pin you down and ask you. I know you probably have goals, but I do have a bigger question, which is, man, I love your emphasis on culture, putting your team first, getting the right people. I got to ask you, as you grow, that gets harder, right? I mean, if you had one practice, you could really feel it and see it. So how do you manage that? How do you manage to keep the culture solid, to get the right people as you're growing and as you're in rapid expansion mode?
Making sure you have the right people on your team to follow up with, right? It's and to this day, I still don't, in the sense that, we're still growing, still trying to nurture people to vertically grow in our practice, so they can serve as managers who can understand that, and really take a step back and kind of assume the leadership role, management role, which I think that does take time and a lot of, reflection. It's hard. It's definitely hard. It's definitely not easy. I mean, I try to have meetings regularly with my team when I can, and sit down and talk about the culture often and say, how are you feeling? How is there tension that we need to resolve? Is there something that, are people not getting along? And generally speaking, they don't ever fight, which is great. And I haven't seen that yet. And I'm not sure, because I'm lucky that I have those team members around to not create tension, or maybe the culture is persistent now. Maybe it's just kind of there. I'm not sure. I haven't answered that question yet. I'm still trying to figure that out. Eventually, I want to create a scorecard on measuring team culture, which is hard because how do you quantify feelings? Or how do you quantify interactions?
Yeah.
So I need to start studying, take a step back and objectively viewing it. I haven't figured out those metrics yet.
Yeah. So I'm going to tangent a little bit. So you're at 8 practices. Lewis, what is your typical week look like? And what are you doing on a daily basis?
Calls, meetings, emails, getting feedback from the team, saying, hey, what's working, what's not working, what are you constantly seeing? I always tell my team members, like, the only way we're going to figure out what's working is that we follow it. Because I don't care about errors. If there are honest errors and honest mistakes, we should recognize them, because if they're consistently done, that means that there's something wrong in our process. Our machine, our equation is wrong for some reason. We got to figure that out. What's the variable? So that's normal days, more feedback. Luckily for each of our, like the GP practices, we have an owner doctor, and the same, align with the same vision. So culture first, team members first. So it's easy because we have an on-site, owner who can actually report back and say, hey, we're seeing this. Let's figure something out. How do we do this? Do we let someone go? Do we bring more people on? Is it the right time to bring people on? So on and so forth. So the decision is not made singularly, it's more plural.
Yeah, I love that. And you kind of mentioned these partnerships you have with on-site owners or partners. What do you look for? You're in expansion mode. I'm sure that you see that COVID has it seems like it's almost accelerated the M&A market a little bit. What do you look for when you're actually looking at these practices? What catches your eye?
It's hard because I don't know if we nailed it on the head yet in terms of finding a profile that makes sense to us. But I think it depends on our personal interests too, to see where we want to go as partners in terms of like where we want to live, right? It's a simple question but it does matter. I'm from New York City. I'm from New York, went to school in New York City, love the urban environment. I'm a very urban guy. I love the hustle and bustle. My partner lives not too far away from me in New Jersey. Doesn't mind going to the city, loves the city too. My other partner lives in the city. So like it helps us be strategic in terms of how we manage it, because we can be present at any given time. Yeah. Now, the hard part is, finding out the more remote practices now, right? Haven't ventured into that yet in terms of management. So that's going to be a new challenge. But that's how we decide, our practices will just be somewhere that everyone would like to go, whether it's commuter score, whether it's walkable, is there parking, is there, is there a huge, the demographic of dentists there, or so we look at data too.
Yeah, that's that's extremely key. If you look at it, I'm just doing the math. I haven't done this yet. You're 5 years out of dental school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You see how much this gentleman's accomplished in 5 years? It's unreal. And I'm going to transition just a tad bit more, Bill. I'm probably driving you nuts, but when I met you in person, I think you were doing an interview and hitting some bicep curls. And I know fitness is an extremely important aspect of your life. Just unpack that a little bit. Why is fitness so important, to you, and how do you think it makes you better?
Clarity. My personal energy. You're waking up, you're still groggy. If you haven't had your cup of coffee, things just go sideways. For me, going to the gym in the morning is just a good way to reset and start the day with a clear mind. Oftentimes when I do miss it, even if I go for 10 minutes, it's better than have not gone at all. Because I know I see a huge difference in how I actually perceive conversations and how people talk to me and how I respond. So it feels like I'm a more reactive responder when I haven't gone and started my day early. But I am definitely a lot more proactive. Despite how tired I am, I'm a more proactive thinker. And it just gets me more productive throughout the day. Your energies are high, everyone can feel it, and it's really important that the team can share that with you too. Because of course, if the guy who's calling the shots is not doing so great, they're gonna say, "Oh, something's wrong with this guy." So we're walking eggshells right now. I don't want that, right? So I need to be better for myself first, which is take care of myself before I take care of others.
Yeah, I mean, that's so good. It's so hard to do, but makes so much. I mean, you feel so much better after you do it, and it's common sense, but it's just so hard to do for a lot of individuals. Focus. It's the whole put your oxygen mask on first, right?
Right.
Yep.
Just take care of you first.
Take care of you
So,
first. Yeah.
just a couple more, and we'll wrap up here, Lewis. But what would be your advice out there now? It could be somebody who just got out of dental school, maybe still in dental school, or maybe out as an associate for 1 or 2 years, whatever. What would be your best advice for them if they're thinking about dental practice ownership? What would you recommend they start doing now?
I guess I get more advice for sure. Because I actually, interestingly enough, I was speaking to someone who just got out of dental school, and we had coffee together. He had a vision. I gave him my 2 cents. I always tell people practice ownership is not what it seems. It's everything but easy. I mean, if I find it hard, then chances are it's pretty hard. And I usually don't find things too difficult because I handle a lot, but it's a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, because you know what? Not only are you just taking care of patients, but you're taking care of your team. You got to make sure you're going to take care of their well-being. Like now you're providing for others outside of patients. You're providing for people who have kids. You're providing for people who want to pay rent, right? There's so much more to think about outside of just patient care, right? Owning a practice is fantastic, but it's everything that comes with it is tough, right? HR, law, tax, attorneys, all that stuff. It gets hectic, and choosing the right team to work with in terms of the legal team, whether it's your CPA team, all of the above, it's tough. It's hard to make those decisions. And sometimes you don't know whether or not it's going the right direction because it's a cloudy road, right? My biggest advice is to really try to use practice ownership as a way to reflect on what you want to do in the future. I think people like to say, hey, if you go to dental school right now, if you hold a seminar and you ask the class, the audience, hey, how many people want to own a practice? Everyone's going to raise their hand. I want to own a practice. And everyone's going to say first 5 years. First, and I see it all the time. 3 years time, and I interview, they say the same thing. I'm going to own a practice in 3 to 5 years. But they realize that being an associate is actually a fantastic thing. Yeah. No headaches. Don't have to pay all those taxes. Taxes are already accommodated for, and the hiring and all of the above. You can completely remove out of your plate. You can focus on your own personal investments, whether it's maybe buying a house, maybe putting into the market, whatever it may be. Why tie up all your liquid capital into the practice when you don't have an idea how to manage it, right? And I always tell people all the time, if it were me, if I were just didn't meet the right person, that's what I would have done. I would have just associated and put my money somewhere else, right? But people don't think about that.
Something tells me you probably would not have been content with that. I could be wrong here. That doesn't sound like it takes enough hours, but you're exactly right. And that's kind of what we tell people. We call that phase 1, which is people who maybe have an entrepreneurial bent, but they're not sure. There's a lot of people out there who the right path is that employee. And right. There's nothing wrong with that. If there's a stigma against it, there shouldn't be. That is a perfectly acceptable way. Because you're right, it's not easy. And one thing that I think we've unpacked here, which Jared and I have experienced, and it sounds like you have too, is it's not easy, but it's really hard alone too. But for you to have those partners who kind of complement your skill set and allow you guys to think strategically in an aligned way, that helps. And not everybody has that luxury. So that again makes it even tougher.
It's nice to have people on the same page always. Communication is key, whether the risks that are involved. Never say just yes. Learn to say no. It's really important for the new grads. Learn to say no. And I still to this day don't know how to say no because I always say yeah. And because I realize it's always a fun thing to do. And I realize there's a lot of work involved with it, but it gives you, and the nice thing is that the more you understand this, the more you realize dentistry it's great. And I think that people should be a great clinician before they even jump into ownership or even buying into a practice as a partner. Is that you don't want to be thinking about the clinical dentistry and then think about the business at the same time. It's way too hard. And as I'm in it right now, it's hard for me to do work and I see patients, do work and see patients. You just can't be 100% committed to the growth. And I realized that learning to let go is also another huge learning lesson for me that, I feel I could do everything. I'm like, yeah, I'll just do this, I'll do this, I'll do that. But I realized that my efforts are diluted and I'm not giving my 100% focus and concentration, which is in essence, poor outcomes.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway, one of the biggest takeaways from this episode is if you're out there listening and it's like, is practice ownership right for me? They're in that phase one. We said the word mentor, I don't know how many times in this episode, is reach out and find that mentor. And
Yeah.
Bill, I'll agree with you. Lewis, if you didn't find that mentor, you said it was luck. I think if you didn't find it, you would have gone out and found another mentor. If that individual didn't cross your path, you would have gone and hustled and find another one. So I don't know
Yeah.
if it is as much luck as you said it is.
But what's interesting, it comes with them your personal interests too, right? Now, when I go to networking events, I always try to put myself out there, get to know people, because like young grads, there's not much more you could actually and what answers do you have? There's a lot more questions than answers, and
That's right.
some people who want to share will share. And I realize I get attracted to that because I get to be more open. I have more open conversations. But yeah, no matter what, like to just the point, I was like, if I hadn't found a mentor, I would have found one. But you know what? Would it be? And I always wonder to this day, like, what if things were different? I have no idea where I would be. I don't think I would ever be where I am right now. But that's besides the point. I am where I am, and I got very, very lucky. But with that being said, doesn't mean that one mentor is enough. It's good to have multiple mentors in other disciplines, and I think that pigeonholing to one person is also tough. And I think it's great to have multiple mentors who have different mindsets, different mentalities, and you are the amalgamation of all of that, and then you are your own sort of mentor for others in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. Lewis, we'll wrap it up here. Let's end on the last question we always ask. So if you're talking to a dental practice owner today, what would you say to them, what they need to start doing now in order to gain momentum in their practice?
You got to step back, really learn to step back and let go. And I think dentists often likes to be in control, right? We hear that often. There's a couple of stereotypes with dentists, right? Like one of which is so super controlling. And I realized that letting go of control is a form of strength too, because I think that letting go is important to, go further up, elevate yourself further. And I think it's understanding when to let go versus just let go. Like I mentioned earlier, is that, how do I delegate work? And it's tough. I need to learn how to delegate first, which means providing the resources for delegation. And then I can kind of oversee that and see the business kind of function with it. But that's one thing for our practice owners, like just learn to let go, learn to trust the team. The second thing is build a good team culture, whatever that means. And it's hard. And it's hard when it's like kind of, muddled with already. It's hard to introduce, you can't walk in and say, hey, I'm a brand new person, let's change the culture and everything's gonna be good and great. It takes time to groom, and that results do come over time. But I can never say enough, like, going to a practice of team good culture, like you're just happier. You're just happier to provide for others, and the team members can do the same. That is a very tangible thing that one can do. But it does require one to kind of step back a little bit to, have those conversations.
Yeah, that's awesome. Bill, that's another soundbite. Letting go of control is a form of strength. That's gold, man.
I love it.
That is pure gold. Well, Lewis, we appreciate you joining us, man. How can viewers reach out? If they have a question or so, how can they reach out to you?
They can email me, Lewis Chen, DDS. So it's LEWISCHENDDS @gmail.com. Happy to field any questions. Love sharing share my feedback, because I know that my path is so unique and different that it can't be replicated, because how I saw things, how I do things is so different from anyone else down the street. So happy to provide insight however I can to make sure that you get a little more clarity, and actually, in essence, asking me questions gives me more clarity, because there might be questions that I might not have thought about. And like, for instance, like Bill is asking so many great questions. I'm like, man, like if my mind can turn that quick and think about those nuances, that'd be great. so like, I mean, like I think about it, I'm like, wow, what a small like tidbit of fact that you had a deeper sort of question to ask from that. And like, great example, like now I can learn from that. Like now I could maybe fine tune those small facts and learn more. So I thank you, Bill, for those questions, and Jared, like for asking me those questions that are contemplative. So that's why I love doing these things, because I learn more than ever.
Get better every day, man. Never stop.
Every day. Never stop.
Well, Lewis, appreciate you, man. Everybody out there, like I said, I mean, dynamite episode here. So if you listen to this, share it with somebody. leave a review. But Lewis, we need to have you back maybe in a year, get an update on this and see where you're at in your dental journey.
Talk about your 25 practices.
That's right.
We'll see if that happens. Maybe I'll go a little bit more white here at this point. But I really appreciate your questions, and I appreciate for just having me on. It's an honor, and hope I can be of help to anyone else.
No, awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you having us or coming on here, and everybody out there, we'll talk to you guys soon. We'll see you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Bye.